Welcome everyone to tonight's program, Curator's Choice Digital Dive. My name is Alexandra O'Neill and I'm the Membership and Event Manager for the Wolfsonian FIU. Tonight I'm joined by Yucef Merhi. Yucef Merhi is a curator, researcher, and artist that specializes in digital art. He holds a master's in interactive telecommunications from New York University and has lectured at numerous academic institutions for the past 25 years. Yucef is a curator of digital collections at the Wolfsonian Florida International University, where he has been leading the development and implementation of digital technologies. Prior to joining the Wolfsonian, Merhi worked at Columbia University and curated exhibitions for MoCA, Los Angeles, the Americas Society, the Esther Klein Art Gallery, Science Center, White Box, and Canal, where he curated the first solo exhibition of Elias Crespin, whose work is currently featured in the permanent collection of the Louvre Museum. Tonight, we will explore the digitization process behind bringing our most rare volumes online. Yucef will walk us through the Wolfsonian's DigiBooks Library and discuss the historical context contained in some of his selections and explain how digital tools like DigiBooks engage countless new audiences with the Wolfsonian's many treasures. Yucef, thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Thank you, Alexandra, and thank you to all the patrons who are with us tonight, or those who will be watching this in the future. So we're going to start this journey at the Wolfsonian Library. And I'm going to click here. This is the library foyer, and the Wolfsonian Library accounts for more than half of the 200,000 works in the museum collection. It houses more than 125,000 rare books, periodicals, reference materials, special archives, and ephemeral items, including historical photographs, advertisements, brochures, calendars, leaflets, labels, sheet music covers, matchbox covers, vintage postcards, and more. The third floor is a regular stop for the curatorial team, and I personally find it fascinating. Besides the consultation area, there is a study room for scholars and fellows, staff offices, and a vast storage area here on the right, and even an exhibition space. Here we have one of the librarians, the chief librarian, Frank Luca. So before the pandemic, the consultation area was regularly visited by our patrons, students, scholars, and a diverse group of people that was welcomed by the library staff. Many times visitors would find materials that were organized and presented by our dedicated librarians. One of the most emblematic objects in our collection is a sumptuous long red cover book published in 1876. I'm referring to the Rime of the Ancient Mariner by Samuel Taylor Coleridge, illustrated by Gustave Doré. Here we have Micky Wolfson perusing the book at the library. And as some of you know, this title became the seed of Micky's collection. But who better than Micky to tell the story? So let's listen to him.
The first object I collected was a book. And it was the Rime of the Ancient Mariner by Coleridge, and it was illustrated by Gustave Doré. I was 12 or 13 and I was in Paris, and my father had given me 5 francs and said I could go out with my brother and do it and buy whatever I wanted with 5 francs. And so I went with Louis to the bookstalls along the Seine, and I found this book. And I said to Louis, "This is the one I want." And it was 5 francs. And he said, "Now, Micky, are you sure this is what you want? Days in front of us, and you might, no, I want it. This is what I want. I know what I wanted." And he said, "Well, all right." And so I took my 5 francs and I bought it. And I was very proud of myself and very happy. And my brother said to me, you didn't ask, and so I didn't tell you. But you bought a second edition, and you should not have bought a second edition. You should have bought a first edition. And I said, what's the second edition? What's the first edition? He said, well, that's the questions you should have asked before you threw your 5 francs to the man.
It's a great story. So last year, the book was digitized and converted into a DigiBook, and it became accessible through the Timeliner, which is an interactive project that was displayed as part of our exhibition, A Universe of Things, Micky Wolfson collects, which would be available online very, very soon. And here is the book. You can see that the book cover and the illustrations inside of this book are astonishing. The pages can be flipped, and it gives you the feeling, this tangible feeling that you are manipulating a real book. And then you have, several options. You can go full screen, and then you can zoom and see the numerous details. You can even go and zoom in and zoom out, read the wonderful poem by Coleridge. And it definitely provides a remarkable experience that is far from being, a PDF or something static. This dynamic experience makes it more engaging, and it connects you with this primordial feeling of having a book. Although it doesn't have the smell, it doesn't have like the texture, but this is a good way to experience one of our books in the collection. And also you can navigate the book via thumbnails. So you can select which page do you want to see, and it will bring you into that page. And there are many different versions of this book. There are prior ones that had more exotic or central images. And Gustave Doré is considered not only an illustrator, but also an artist. However, he found that this work was one of his masterpieces. So I'm going to move on, and I'm going to get inside of the library. This is the storage area, and it's very difficult to find images of the skeleton and the organs of our library on the public realm. So this might be the very first time that these images are seen here in the web. And this is a detail where you can see boxes filled with, playing cards, playbills, pins, photographs. There are hundreds of thousands of materials and objects that are quite historical valuable. And one collection that that we have and we're proud to have is our collection of pochoirs. And here we can see one of those pochoirs that later on was digitized. But what is a pochoir? And a pochoir is a French word for stencil. Stenciling is one of the oldest techniques and dates back to the Stone Age. Cave dwellers made hand images by blowing or spraying paint around hands pressed against rock surfaces. So this is probably one of the oldest art techniques that we know existed in the history of humankind. And then going to recent times, in the 1920s and 1930s, the Art Deco era, the color application process of the stencil was rejuvenated by the French, bringing color illustration processes for books and prints to glorious heights. And it's interesting in exploring the stencil process, the fact that came in reaction to the proliferation of machine painting and machine printing, and the poor quality of color reproductions in publishing. With pochoir printing, the hand application of layers of pigments created dazzling effects that the camera or printing press could never replicate. And even when we look at the stencils that we have at the Wolfsonian, we can see how vivid is the color. And it's absolutely fascinating. In the 20th century, pochoir printmaking was famous by Picasso and Matisse and many other well-known artists. And this term pochoir became a synonym for many artists working around that time. So here we have one of the displays that were installed at the library for Deco Design, an exhibition that was made in tandem with Art Deco on the 6th floor. And now let's see one of the books called Papillons, or Butterflies. And this is a selection, a compendium of images and illustrations that depict butterflies from all over the world. And we have an index here where you can read the countries. Let's go full screen. So we have butterflies from India, from the Amazons, Venezuela, Brazil, Madagascar, China, Congo, different countries and continents. And we can see how alive are the colors in the pochoirs. I'm going to browse the end of the book because it will give us an idea of how these pictorial representations became abstract representations. So we can see the butterflies, and then the last pages, we can see abstract patterns and different ways of depicting these butterflies. And at that time, abstraction was becoming more utilized in the visual arts. And we can see that it also had a great impact in design as well. I'm going to move on. And now I'm going to show you one fascinating piece that is now exhibited at a Universe of Things Micky Wolfson collects. And this is a Volkswagen booklet made in 1938. And I'm going to show you the booklet that is presented in tandem with the digital version, with the DigiBook. And as you can see, this the cover of this booklet has the swastika, and it has a Volkswagen. And you know, when we see the combination of these two symbols, if you don't know the history of Volkswagen, it becomes unclear why there is a swastika in there. So when Hitler took charge of Germany, he invited Ferdinand Porsche, an Austrian automobile engineer, to design the People's Car. As Porsche was of Austrian origin, Hitler asked him to apply for German citizenship. In response to this, Porsche gave up his Czechoslovak citizenship and joined the National Socialist German Workers' Party. In 1937, the company was set up by the Nazi Trades Union organization. And by then, very few Germans owned cars at the time. The aim was to create a people's car. And Hitler decrees that the car should carry 2 adults and 3 children at 100 kilometers per hour, 60 miles per hour, and it should be cheap, costing no more than a motorbike to buy. Hitler then commissioned Porsche to design the KDF-Wagen, the strength through joy. And the car had an air-cooled rear engine, torsion bar suspension, and an aerodynamic beetle shape. So in 1938, a factory was built for the company, and around 336,000 people subscribed to buy the car via monthly savings plan. By the outbreak of war, only a handful of cars were complete, and none were delivered to customers. Then in 1939-1945, during World War II, civilian car production ceases, and the firm switches to making army equipment and vehicles for the German army, using more than 50,000 slave laborers from nearby concentration camps. And going back to Porsche, after becoming a member of the Nazi Party, was called the Great German Engineer by Nazi officials. He was a recipient of several Nazi awards and was involved in the production of several advanced tanks, self-propelled guns, and deadly bombs that were constructed and manufactured at the Volkswagen factory. And I'm going to switch to the next image before showing you the booklet. And you can see the swastika as a logo, which is also here. And the swastika became the very first logo of Volkswagen. Later on in 1938, it was stylized. And in 1939, the classic VW logo was put in place. And then the logo evolved slightly until the one that we know today. And here we have a picture of Adolf Hitler amused with a prototype model of the Volkswagen. And this is Porsche showing the rear of the car, which was supposed to hold the luggage and carry stuff. So I'm going to show you the booklet briefly. And this is made out of transparencies. Those are transparent pages that are placed on the top of the other one. And when you see it, it's a full car, and then you can start getting, like, fragmenting the car into pieces. So those are like slices where you can see the different parts and the constitution of the car. And it's fascinating the way the perspective was depicted in this representation. So this is an interesting drawing, which was not the blueprint of the Volkswagen, but a car that was designed by Bela Baregni, who is credited with having conceived the basic design in the mid-1920s, 5 years before Ferdinand Porsche claimed to have made his initial version. And both Porsche and Baregni worked at Mercedes-Benz. And then Baregni kept working until the end of his life. And the car also had many similarities with the Tatra, which was made in Czechoslovakia. And finally, I'm going to present another digibook that was made for an exhibition called Cuban Caricature and Culture, The Art of Massaguer. And this is an installation that was presented on the 5th floor next to the permanent collection. And we had a selection of objects, magazines, and drawings, photographs related to Massaguer, who was a well-known caricaturist and editor of several Cuban avant-garde magazines that were made in the 1920s. And here is a detail of the digibook that you could play with and see next to the physical book that was beautifully installed in one of the galleries. And this is the digibook. It says, "Voy bien, Camilo." Am I going right, Camilo? And it was created as soon as Castro got into power and initiated his so-called revolution. And this book, what I like about this book is that it's filled with ads from that era. And you can see like different companies like Polar, which later on was created in Venezuela. And it really shows this satire about the revolution and Castro, and you know it's quite compelling, the connection with all these companies. So there is some very strange capitalistic association with brands like, you know, Coca-Cola and the revolution. And of course, Massaguer was against Castro and his so-called revolution. So you can go page by page, and again, you can go through the thumbnails, and then you can see, you know, how many of these companies, such as Royal, that we have here, and also the electricity of Cuba, were somehow exported. Their images were exported to countries like Venezuela, as I mentioned before. And these logos became part of the companies that were created in South America. So, and now you can see how this is part of the installation. Finally, we have all these books at the DigiBooks Library. You can access the DigiBooks Library by entering into the Wolfsonian.org or going directly to experiences.wolfsonian.org/digibooks. There you will find about 10 books that have been included in different exhibitions. And we're currently working on a new manuscript that is going to be included in our next exhibit at the Wolfsonian. And it will be available at the DigiBooks Library. So thank you very much, and I hope you enjoyed this presentation.
Thank you, Yucef. I really enjoyed the presentation. I really liked that you showcased how we're using the technology, not just inside of the museum, but also kind of bringing the online experience, especially since some of our members or the public haven't been allowed since we've been closed to the public. But I like how, you know, when you first think of accessibility inside the museum, you can think of it as, you know, something to kind of enhance the experience, especially for visitors that might have like hearing loss or visual impairment. And then it kind of like over time has become, you know, a tool to enhance the overall museum experience. I have a question, and I want to let the audience know that if you have a question for Yucef, feel free to use the Q&A tab to ask him a question. So I want to know, how do you think we can strike a balance to ensure that technology supports rather than overshadows the overall museum experience?
This is a good question. And I think it's something that we've been asking ourselves on every single exhibition and in general. We are using technology not as like, we're not using technology for the sake of technology, but to answer some of the questions that we have about how to display our collection and how to overcome certain issues and problems. For example, with the pandemic, we were, constrained to the digital realm, and we had to come up with a strategy and a plan, so we can keep presenting our efforts. And by doing so, technology became tremendously useful. So I think this is the way that we approach technology at the museum. And we always try to, to keep a balance. So technology is always used in even subtle ways rather than becoming the main attribute of the exhibits.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, the fact that we're able to kind of bring this experience online, definitely increases the diversity of our audience, who has access to art and, drives engagement. I noticed that a couple of different museums have been trying using different like technological, I guess, platforms to attract younger audiences. I think the most popular way, beyond using like an iPad or using a phone, since everyone has a phone, I've seen people create Instagrams to create kind of a more personalized tour with more information. I think the Louvre also used a Nintendo 3DS as an audio guide system. Have you seen any other ways that technology has been used in the museum? Do you have a favorite? Are any of these something that you think that we could bring to the Wolfsonian eventually?
Wow. Well, I think there are many, many different approaches that have been explored by numerous museums. I know that one of the most common is the 360 tours, and that was the primordial tool that museums started using at the very beginning of the pandemic. And prior to that, I would say that museums have been exploring with different ways of showcasing images and content in general. But I think that many institutions are moving towards the use of new technologies, especially, augmented reality, virtual reality, mixed reality, and 3D technologies. And we can see how art fairs are taking advantage of some of these technologies. So I assume that museums are going to keep using, all these different possibilities. The pandemic accelerated the technological deployment in the museum world. And I'm sure that we're gonna have some AR, VR, XR, and 3D experiences very, very soon.
Great. We have a question. The details found in some of the close-ups, do you feel like technology helps given the scale of the material?
Not necessarily. And I think that depends of the device, the format. I mean, there are so many factors. If you are using augmented reality, you can play with the scale, and you can set certain constraints. So you can have a clear idea of the scale. Or if you are placing 3D objects in a virtual context, you can do something similar. But when it comes to flat images in a blank canvas, it's quite hard to have a reference unless you have, referential points, a human being or objects that can give you an idea of the space. But I think that's also changing because we're moving from 2D into 3D. And by doing so, this spatial notion of dimensions and depth is going to evolve as well.
What do you think some of the challenges are with the digitization process? Is it, as you mentioned, turning something that's 2D into 3D? Are there other things that one wouldn't think would also go into the process that makes it a little bit more difficult?
Right. So I think there are many, many different challenges. One of our goals at the Wolfsonian is to have an authentic experience of the object that we are presenting, no matter if it's in the physical space or the digital space. And we have, an excellent photographer at the museum, Linton Gardiner, who, try to capture even the texture, the lighting, like all these subtleties that are part of the objects. And we've been, trying to apply that to our digital initiatives so people can have a close-up experience of the object. We're going to have another project coming into the online section very, very soon called the Timeliner. And the Timeliner will give you also the opportunity to zoom in to like very large canvases and objects. So you can, see in depth details that are even hard to see when we are in front of the object. And I think that the restriction that many museums have in like getting closer to the object can be overcome using digital technologies.
Well, I want to thank Yucef for joining us tonight and all of our members for attending tonight's program. If you'd like to stay in touch with the Wolfsonian, please subscribe to our newsletter at wolfsonian.org. Again, thank you. Yucef, I'm really excited to see some of the other projects that you've been working on, and I know that we're going to share that with our members as soon as they go live. And we hope to see everyone at November's Curator's Choice. So thank you again.
Alexandra.
Good night.
Thank you, everyone. Good night.